Renewed Hope is yet another talent woven into the disc tree to make shields a staple. Halfway through the disc tree, it's already gone from an expensive 3,500 damage absorption on a cooldown to a reasonably cheap 7,000 damage absorption without a cooldown that triggers a whole bunch of amazing effects on both you and the target. Renewed Hope reduces damage taken by you and all friendly party and raid targets by 3% for 20 seconds after casting a shield. Aspiration is very useful if you use penance a lot, which you should be. Paintsuppression in tier 9 is also a clear staple. Divine Aegis gets triggered on a critical heal and absorbs 30% of the amount healed within the next 12 seconds, a worthwhile investment for 3 points. Grace is a clear tank healing throughput talent that stacks a buff on the last target you healed, which increases healing received from you by 3% per stack. You can stack it up to 3 times for a total increase of 9%. Borrowed Time in the 10th tier is the last talent that turns Powered Shield into an absolute great spell. Every time you cast a shield, your next spell will gain 25% spell haste in addition to the haste you already have. Additionally, your shields will absorb an amount equal to 40% of your spell power on top of what it already absorbs. If you run with our 2100 spell power example from earlier, that's an extra 840 absorbed damage per shield. To finish up the disc tree, pick up Penance, staple heal. Get it, get used to its cooldown, apply and love it. Now you should have somewhere around 14 talent points left over for the Holy Tree. How you split those up is really entirely up to you, apart from 2 things. You really want to pick up Holy Specialization in Tier 1 and Inspiration in Tier 3. 5% extra crit chance on Holy Spells and 10% less physical damage taken after you crit for your target, especially if your target is a tank, is incredibly useful. Disc specs, as mentioned, have very little wiggle room, but if you absolutely want to grab a talent that I haven't introduced because you feel uncomfortable without it in your playing style, go right ahead and pick it up. What I've shown you is the cookie cutter disc spec. The one that has to be comfortable using it is you. There are only 4 useful glyphs for discipline healing, and one of them I only include in the odd case that you're a disc priest almost entirely assigned to raid healing. That glyph would be Glyph of Prayer of Healing. Should that not be the case, you should run with the setup of Glyph of Penance, Glyph of Powered Shield, and Glyph of Flash Heal. Glyph of Penance reduces the cooldown on Penance by 2 seconds. Combined with Aspiration, which reduces it by another 20%, you end up with an 8-second cooldown, which isn't half bad. Glyph of Powered Shield instantly heals the target for 20% of the amount it will absorb. This effect can crit. With our 2100 spell power, that's around 1200 health healed per shield cast. Glyph of Flash Heal reduces its mana cost by 10%. Minor glyphs will not directly affect your throughput or efficiency, but Glyph of Levitate and Glyph of Fortitude are usually good picks for convenience. Also, Glyph of Shadow Fiend is moderately useful if you tend to summon the bugger in the wrong moment, and it dies instantly to some sort of annoying AoE. As one of 3 cloth caster classes, you'll always face gear competition. It's all the more important to know what you want and look for in gear. Lots of stats are good for us. I'll list them in the order of how I rate their importance. First up, Intellect, then Spell Power, then Crit or Haste rating, then Spirit and MP5, and then Stamina. Since Wrath of the Lich King, Intellect has been the most potent and useful regen stat we have. Not only does it enlarge your mana pool, it also greatly affects how much mana you regenerate from Replenishment, Shadow Fiend, and Hymn of Hope. It increases your critical strike rate, around 150 intellect equal 1% critical strike rate, and gives you additional MP5 based on your total spirit and intellect. There's been the question of how much intellect is enough intellect, but this is a really tough one to answer. I almost want to say never, because really, you can't go wrong with intellect, but it also depends on the level of content you raid and your usual raid setup. If you only raid normal modes and have constant access to Innervate and Mana Tide, your need for intellect will be a lot lower than mine, so instead I'll say, if you don't run out of mana and are comfortable with your mana pool, you have enough intellect and should instead stack Spell Power. Spell Power is the easiest and most straightforward throughput stat. The more spell power, the bigger your heals. Also, the bigger your heals, the bigger your overheals, but on the whole, spell power is the most direct throughput increase you can get. Not to mention it also affects your powered shield absorption and hence the glyph heal. Critical strike rating and haste rating are nice for discipline priests just like any other class, but you should pick up plenty of both of them through gear and talents as is. Don't forget to factor in borrowed time, which should be in effect for most of your actual spell casts, and focused will, as well as holy specialization for an extra 8% crit. Unlike Holy Priest, we don't gain anything from Spirit other than mana regen. Our Spirit is not converted in part to spell power, so there is no reason for us to be picking up Spirit other than what we already got on our gear. The same goes for MP5. If you need mana regen, improve your intellect. As for stamina, we all need it. Stamina automatically goes up as your gear level increases. Unless your gear level is way below the level of content you're doing, you'll pretty much always have enough of it. As for enchants and gemming, this is pretty simple. Discipline Priest enchants are very straightforward. I'll list what's generally considered the best choice for each slot. As for your head enchant, Arcanum of Burning Mysteries, the 30 spell power and 20 critical strike rating enchant, available at the Kirintor Quartermaster at Revered Reputation, would be your best choice. For your shoulder, the Greater Inscription of the Storm, which adds 24 spell power and 15 critical strike rating, and is available at the Sons of Hodir Quartermaster at Exalted Reputation, would be the number one choice. Or alternatively, Greater Inscription of the Crag, same place and rep. As for your back, Dark Glow or Light Weave Embroidery for a tailor, 23 haste otherwise. Your chest you should put 10 stats on. As for your wrist, 30 spell power is the Supreme Bracer enchant. Your weapon is best off with 63 spell power for one-hander, or 81 for a staff. As for your hands, 28 spell power is pretty much the only useful caster enchant to gloves. Your legs should have Brilliant Spell Thread on them, which is 50 spell power and 20 spirit. As for your feet, Tusker's Vitality, which adds 15 stamina and a slight run speed increase, or alternatively 18 spirit. As far as gemming goes, there are different ways to gem your character. You can stack just one stat that you are lacking or that you favor and neglect all others, or you can choose to gem for socket bonuses. Gemming pure spell power is very valuable for disc. If you choose to go for socket bonuses though, you should gem Ruined Cardinal Rubies in red slots, and Luminous Amatrons in yellow slots if you have a chance at the socket bonus for that piece. You'll need at least one blue gem to activate your meta gem, but other than that you may find it best to ignore socket bonuses featuring blue gems and putting Ruined Cardinal Rubies instead. There are several meta gems that you may find interesting. Widely considered as the best choice for healers is the Insightful or Siege Diamond, which gives you 21 intellect and has a chance to restore 600 mana on a spell cast. That effect, assuming you cast a spell about every 2 seconds, nets around 75 MP5 on average. Another valid throughput stat would be Amber Skyflare Diamond, which gives you 25 spell power and 2% intellect, and slightly less valuable but still valid, Beaming Earth Siege Diamond, which gives you 21 critical strike rating and 2% mana. That about covers the basics of successful discipline priesting. Thank you for watching.